Thank you, Roxanne. And it's, just about morning still. So I'm the kind of speaker that often gets put in a conference at this point, around being a kind of, hopefully, a source of energy and some good ideas. So, I'm going to talk about being an organisational change agent. I've been an organisational change agent inside the NHS for 24 years. And, obviously we look back, but I think we need to look forward. And what I want to talk about are some of the clues around where change agency is and where it needs to go into the future. And I think this theme is very much, about we absolutely have to rock the boat. In terms of where the whole agenda for change in our organisations is going, whether we're in the public sector, the private sector, the voluntary sector, but we also need to be able to stay in it. So, when I look back over my 24 years, how does it feel? This is an art installation from an artist called Adam Katz, and what he did is that he took 13,000 orange plastic soldiers, those little ones, and he put them on a window, and it says, "All of my good ideas are battles." And that's how my life has felt. In a sense, because the kind of things that we do when we're change agents inside organisations is, we're challenging the status quo, we're saying we need to do things differently, and it's a very, very hard life. And another quote that I like here comes from Thomas Huxley, the evolutionary biologist, and here he's talking about Darwin and then theory of natural selection. And he says, new truths begin as heresies. And I think that's one of the issues for us as change agents, because in a sense we're the heretics. We're bringing the new truths that people often don't want to hear. So I want to show you a new truth now, okay, one that I really adhere to strongly. And this comes from Gary Hamel, who, according to the Financial Times, is the #1 business influencer in the world. And this is what he says. He says, change always starts on the fringe or at the edge, and change always starts with the activists, okay? And I think that is a very different view of the world, or a very different truth to the truth that many of the leaders of the kind of hierarchies that many of us work in or work with, okay? Change doesn't begin at the top, no. Change doesn't get rolled out in a hierarchical way. It begins in a different place. And I think this is a new truth that, more and more we need to work with. So, if we're going to talk about the organisational change agent of the future, what we need to be doing is thinking about, what's happening in the future and what is happening in this bigger world of change. And I have this fantastic job in the NHS in England. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer, which means that my job is about linking up with other people across the world in other sectors and industries, as well as in other healthcare systems, around, where is change going? Where does it need to go? So I work with practitioners, with researchers, with futurists. And what's interesting to me is that whatever industry we look at, people are saying the same things and are pointing to the same directions. And what are the things that people are talking about? Well, the first is that increasingly change is becoming more disruptive, and it's happening at a faster rate. The second thing that's happening is the kind of revolution that is being created by digital connectivity. When you think about it, like 10 years ago, we didn't have Google, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have 4G, we didn't have Skype, And the thing about this digital connectivity is that it enables us to connect with virtually anybody else in the developed world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at very little cost or very little effort. And I think in our bigger world of change, it's making a massive difference. The third thing that's happening is that work is becoming more and more complex generally. In the past, people did jobs that were, highly standardized and replicable. And we're moving into the era of the knowledge worker. Okay, work is becoming more and more complex. Oh my goodness, we so see that in my sector, in healthcare. If I talk to colleagues who work in hospitals, for instance, and you just look at the patients that are coming in the doors of hospitals now compared to even 4 or 5 years ago, they're so much sicker. okay, their needs are so much more complex, and there's much, much less predictability. If you talk to colleagues who work in primary care, what they'll tell you is that many people are being supported in terms of their health and care needs in primary care, who, again, just 3 or 4 years ago would have been dealt with by a specialist in a hospital. Now they're being managed in primary care. And our workloads are just becoming more complex, and it's happening multiple industries across the world. Okay? As work is becoming more complex, there is an inevitable consequence of that, which is that the power of hierarchy is diminishing. So many of the ways, that we went about change in the past, where we could stand at the top of the organisation and pull the operational levers of hierarchy to make change happen down the organisation, guess what? It ain't working in the same way. And the final thing I wanted to talk about, again, there's an absolute global trend that change is moving to the edge of organisations. So if we think about the research and development side of major corporations, what we're beginning to realise as leaders is that we can't put our R&D and our innovation and our change management in the middle of the organisation at the heart of the hierarchy, because things are changing so quickly. We need our most creative thinking, our development, our innovation to be right at the edge of our organisations, so that the people that are leading that work are connecting with other people constantly and bringing the ideas back in. So, what I've tried to do here on this slide is to combine, synthesize on one slide what I think some of the big directions are. I can see a lot of you writing things down. One thing I wanted to say is that every slide I'm showing you is available for you to have and do what you like with, so you don't have to write it all down, unless you want to. But I know, again, Roxanne talked about evidence, and actually there's a lot of evidence that say if you write things down, you remember it better, so very good practice, yeah. Okay, so let's just kind of have a little whiz through this, okay? So what I'm doing here is contrasting what I'm calling a dominant approach to change with an emerging direction. Now, what's very important about this is not a from to, because whilst hierarchical power may be changing, it is very much alive and kicking and will remain so. And why I want to show you this is because this is about, where we have to operate as change agents is in this very uncomfortable, difficult, ziggy-zaggy place in the middle. We need to work with both. So let's look at this. So here, change is through hierarchy. So in a sense, the people with the power are the people with position. Whereas on this side, the emerging direction is very much power through connection. So in a sense, the people with the power are the people that can connect, influence, despite or even if they have no hierarchical power. Here, we talk about the mission and the vision of the organisation. Okay, very important. But increasingly, we're living in a world where we can't transform within a single organisational entity. We have to work with many different partners. We have to work with our customers in different ways. So it's very much about building shared purpose. Here we talk about how we make sense through rational argument, through data, through effective rational planning processes. But here, it's about making sense through emotional connection, connecting up with what's in people's hearts, what really matters to them. When I went to improvement school in the NHS, which is quite a long time ago, the thing that I got taught was, Helen, if you want to influence a medical doctor, you have to show them a graph, okay? Because what I got taught was that medical doctors will only be influenced by change if we actually show them, data and rational proof. Guess what? Even medical doctors, are far more likely to engage in change because we connect emotionally than if we show them data. I mean, obviously, we want the best of both worlds, and data is really important. But if we've got some killer data that makes a case and we can wrap it up in a very compelling story that calls people to action, that's absolutely the best of both worlds. Here, when we look about innovation, it's driven from the top of the organisation by leaders. So, absolutely in my healthcare sector at the moment, typically what we're seeing is organisational leaders. I mean, it's in the media all the time. The environment that we work in is very, very tough, very hard. It's hard financially, and it's hard in terms of the sheer volume of patients that we have coming in through our doors and being able to cope with that. So typically here, you know, when we talk about innovation, we say we've got to take £100 million out of our operating budget in the next 18 months, and we're going to do it by an organisation-wide innovation approach. And we get everybody innovating, but it's driven from the top and that need. Whereas here, you know, the creativity is bubbling up, it's viral, it's grassroots. On this side, when we look at improvement methods, you know, we're looking at methods that are tried and tested, the way that we've done things, you know, based on experience. And in a sense, this is my background, this is where I come from, because I'm an improvement methodologist. You know, Lean, Six Sigma, quality management, that's where I come from and what I do. And I say, you know, that those methods have served us very well. I think they're actually very, very problematic much of the time, because so much of it depends on context. And too often we try and drive those methods in a very top-down way and it doesn't work. But you know, generally I'm a really strong believer in those. But because we're moving now into this different world, you know, this world where we can connect with anybody, that's much more social, people connecting on social media all the time, a world that's so much more open, then our ideas and our methods come in different ways. You know, much more open approaches, sharing ideas, comparing data, co-creating change with other people. And one of the things that happened to me recently that really brought this home to me is, well, I'm going to tell you in a little while about a school that we set up for health and care radicals, for change activists. And people took part in our school, our virtual school, from all over the world, okay? We had people from 50 different countries taking part in our school. So we were going to do a graduation ceremony from our school. So we had this really bright idea that we would run this graduation ceremony in Second Life, you know, like with avatars. So that all the people taking part in this graduation ceremony, they'd all choose an avatar, and we'd kind of create this alternative universe, and everybody would come and like get their certificates in this Second Life scenario. So we're really excited about doing this. The only problem was that we had to go to the NHS IT authorities to get permission to do it. And you'd think that we were like planning, you know, the downfall of the NHS computer system, and we weren't allowed to do it. Well, we haven't been allowed to do it yet, but we'll get there. But you know, what was interesting about this was that I had a tutor to teach me this, and it was a 15-year-old lad, okay, a 15-year-old schoolboy. And it's kind of really weird, because I'm like this kind of expert on this side, and I'm like learning all this new stuff from a 15-year-old, and it kind of felt weird, but it was great as well. And you know, on this side, very often, you know, what we're doing is transactional, because it's about program management, it's about holding people to account, it's about contracts, it's about holding people to account in a way that, you know, you have to do it, this is the deal. Whereas on this side, it's about relationships. You know, it's about people engaging in change because they want to, not because they have to. And I think, you know, this is the difference. Okay, this is like, you know, this is the mechanics of the organisation, doing things in ways that enable us to deliver what we have to do. It's about management grip. But this world is a world that's increasingly going to be part of how we have to lead change. And it's people doing change because they want to, not because they have to. So, what's interesting in my world, I work with healthcare organisations across England and across the world. And I reckon about 80-90% of the mindset and the approach is this one. And I think more and more we have to move in the other one. Okay. And now this is kind of funny, but I think that unless we change the way that we go about change, you know, it's true. Instead of risking anything new, let's play it safe by continuing our slow decline into obsolescence. Because, you know, we know that in terms of the agenda that we have, there's just the sheer pace of change, the complexity, okay? Sticking on the left-hand side is not going to deliver what we need to deliver. Okay, let's get comfortable, okay? Who has worked with the John Kotter Leading Change Framework, the 8 steps? Who knows that? Yeah, we all do. Lots of us do. So, you know, anybody that goes to business school, like to do an MBA or a postgraduate course on leading change, you know, we all get taught John Kotter In fact, this book was written 15 years ago, and for 15 years, it's been the #1 change management approach in the world, okay? And it still is. And basically, what John Kotter says is, if you want to lead organizational transformation, then you have to follow these 8 steps. And don't worry, we're not going to go through them all now. But, just to pick a couple of them, he said, first of all, you have to establish a sense of urgency so that people actually want to do change. And then you've got to create a guiding coalition of people to oversee the change. And then you've got to develop a vision and strategy, and so on and so on. And basically, people have been following this for years. Leaders have been following this, If we do these 8 steps, we will maximise our opportunity to create radical change in our organisations. What's interesting is that about 4 months ago, John Kotter published a new book. And John Kotter now says, this doesn't work anymore, okay? That we need to be, because the world has changed. And if John Kotter says the world has changed, the world has changed. Who's read this book, Accelerate, by John Kotter? A few of you, yeah? Basically, what he says is that as organisational leaders, we can't create big change just through hierarchy. We can't take those 8 steps and apply them in our organisations anymore because they won't work in the new world. And he says that the rate of change, the accelerating rate of change is the biggest issue that we have to address. And what he says is that what we need to think about is, yes, we work with those hierarchical levers, and yes, they're still important and effective, but they're not enough. And we've got to work with networks. So, the way I was thinking about it is, when you think about a classic hierarchy, it's actually designed to divide us because it's designed for a world, the old world, where work was very standardized and very replicable, and we could put people into a neat little operating unit and, they could do the work, okay? But it divides us, it keeps us apart. And, in my world of healthcare, okay, we love this. In fact, it's even how we describe ourselves. So we have the division of social work, the division of general practice, the division of occupational psychology, the division of surgery, okay? And it kind of keeps us in our little box, And basically what he's saying is that yes, we have to work with that and the strengths of that, but increasingly we have to work with networks. We have to find out who are the people that are the influencers in informal ways, who are the people with the passion for change, and what are we going to do with it? And there's a lot of implications of this. The first is that in this world we need many, many acts of change and leadership, not just a few, Everybody is a change agent, not just the people that are trained occupational psychologists or trained improvement methodologists. Everybody needs to be a change agent. What he also says, okay, is that in this new world, if we're going to do change effectively, before we even start, we need to get at least 50% buy-in. How many of us work in scenarios where before we start doing an organisational change project, we actually get 50% buy-in? No. Interesting, okay? Maybe that's a new test, And again, what he's saying is we need to change our mindset. We need to change our mindset from have to do change to want to do change. And what he talks about is the spirit of the volunteer. And what he means by that is that we should treat everybody, okay, in our as if they were a volunteer, as if they were getting involved in change because they wanted to, not because they have to. Okay, just going to show you one more. Oh yeah, I was going to show you this one. This is like in the NHS. We're always doing this, We're going to get some management grip here. We've got a very difficult, situation. And, we need to all rally round and make this happen. And here, this is what we're going to hold you to account for, these key performance indicators, Or is it about, I've got a dream? And of course we have to have this. But, I just think we need to get a much stronger balance towards the I have a dream, okay? So this is another article that really has influenced me in my practice as a leader of change. And this was an article that appeared in the July and August 2013 issue of the Harvard Business Review. And it was written by two Canadian researchers, Batalana and Casciaro, and it was called The Network Secrets of Great Change Agents. And what these two Canadian researchers did was they went into a very big organisational system and they followed 61 change initiatives around this big organisational system. And they worked out from that who were the people that were really influential and who were the people that could really make change happen. Does anybody know which big organisational system these two Canadian researchers went round? It was the English NHS. So they went round the NHS, following many, many change initiatives. And it's really worth reading this article because I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. But for our purposes today, I just pulled out two key things. The first thing that they found was when it came to being an effective change agent, it was very little to do with position in the hierarchy. Okay? Being an effective change agent was about how central I am as an influencer in a network. Okay? And I'm far more likely to be effective as a change agent if I'm in the middle of an influential network than if I'm at the top of the hierarchy. And the second thing I pulled out of this for today was they said it's great to talk about networks, but the way that we work with networks, or that we should work with networks, depends on our scale of ambition for change. You see, if we want to create small-scale incremental change, which in its own right is a very good thing, okay, then we need to work through cohesive networks. And what they mean by cohesive networks is being in a network with people like me. So, again, if I just talk about this in my NHS context, so it's like, family physician to family physician, or nurse to nurse, or manager to manager. I'm in a network with people who are like me, that I trust, that I get along with, and who understand my view of the world. And if I'm in a network with them, then that's great for doing small-scale incremental change. However, if we want to create large-scale change, transformational change, like most NHS organisations do, then actually what we've got to do is create what they call bridge networks. And what that means is that we have to find groups that are currently disconnected, and our job as networkers is to pull them together and bring them together. And that's what we need to create big change. What's interesting in the context of the NHS is that our ambition is typically big change, but the way that we mostly go about change is small-scale peer-to-peer. So in a sense, there's a disconnect between our ambition and how we're going about it. I know that some of you have had 2 very late nights, so what I think we'll do now, okay, is I'll go back to that slide that was about this one, okay? That's about the dominant approach in the emerging direction. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. Talk to the person next to you, okay, or the persons. What does this mean for you? Okay, 3 or 4 minutes. That was good. That worked. Okay, because before that I was starting to see a few little droopy eyelids, but they've all gone now, so that's good. Okay, so just sort of a recap then, just so some of the clues that we're taking from this around the organisational change agent of the future. Okay, what we're saying is that we actually have to be able to operate in both worlds and live in that ziggy-zaggy place in the middle. What we're saying is that we need to be able to work with both hierarchical power and with networks. And what we're also saying is that, particularly when we're working in contexts where we want to create big change, we've got to work out ways to bridge these networks between different groups. Okay, so I want to go on now to another thing that I think is really important when it comes to the organisational change agent of the future. And that is that, we're no longer in this world where small-scale incremental change is going to be enough. So we have to be disruptors, because being a change agent means we're challenging the status quo, we're challenging the way that things happen currently. So, disruption has to become the new normal. And the kind of people that disrupt, you know, the heretics, the rebels, the radicals, the disruptive innovators, need to be the people that are leading change in the future. And I really like this quote here from Celine Schillinger, and she says, you know, these are the kind of people that are questioning existing ideas, that are opening up possibilities of new fields for action, that actually these kind of disruptive change agents are the kinds of people that will actually help our organisations to survive and adapt into the next century as the pace of change accelerates. So that's great, okay? Great principle. But what's the reality, okay? What happens to people that are heretics, rebels, radicals, disruptive innovators in organisations? Okay? Do they have a nice life? No. Okay? You know, and because I was told that there's very big focus in this conference on evidence, I thought, well, I better find some evidence, okay? So I found this, which I thought was quite interesting. You know, people experience social isolation and ostracism in the brain often as deeply as physical pain. And I think for all of us in an organisational context, you know, there's so much pressure that keeps us, you know, like the normalization processes that keep us, you know, carrying on doing the work, not questioning, not challenging. And so, you know, one of the things that we need to do, we need to be rebels, and as leaders, we need to love our rebels. So what do we need? What do we need to do as rebels? This is from a fantastic 200-slide share on organisational rebels. So again, you know, when you get the slides afterwards, I really recommend you having a look at this because it's really inspiring. But, you know, when I pulled out, what do we know about rebels? What are they? So first of all, a rebel is the principal champion, okay, somebody who leads change initiatives or causes or calls people to action. And the thing about rebels, they don't wait for somebody in the hierarchy to give them permission to lead or to innovate or strategize. They get on with it, okay? But the thing is that they're not like unguided Exocet missiles going around creating havoc all over the place. You know, because what rebels do is that they start from a place of, really positive place, wanting to make a difference, you know, around the goals of the organisation. They're responsible and they do what's right. And the thing about these rebels, if we can rally them and activate them, for change and improvement in our organisations, they do a great job. They name things that other people don't see yet. You know, they point to new horizons way beyond what we're thinking about. And I think this is my favourite line on rebels. You know, without rebels, the storyline never changes. Things stay the same, and they cannot stay the same. So, you know, what we need into the future is we need people who can rock the boat, you know, but actually manage to stay in it. It's a very hard thing to do. It's walking that very fine line between being different, between fitting in, being inside and being outside. We need both. And, you know, these are the people who are able to challenge the status quo because they can see that there's a better way. Now, what's important, when you look at the evidence base around effective boat rockers, what we see is that these are people that can conform and rebel at the same time. And if I just give you an example of this in the context of my own organisation. So I work for the national improvement body in the NHS called NHS Improving Quality. And I have a little team of rebels. Okay, we're right out there on the edge. We're doing the very leading edge stuff. It's a very difficult job to do in an organisation. We know that we have to be the most conformist group in the organisation. So even though we're like thinking the unthinkable and, you know, pushing out the boat the whole time, okay, we are the team inside NHS Improving Quality that always get our performance reports in on time. We are the people that always turn up to meetings on time. We are the people that always turn up when we say we will. We're the people that never ever speak badly of anybody else in NHS Improving Quality. Because we know that in order to be the rebels that we need to be, we have got to be the best corporate citizens in the whole organisation. So we live constantly with that tension, okay? And it's very, very important. Too often, I think, people that are rebels think, oh, you know, stuff the system. You can't. I think as an organisational change agent, we just need to understand when we can conform and what we have to conform to and when we can rebel. Now, a very important thing about boat rockers is that they're capable of working with other people to create success and to achieve the goals of the organisation. They are not destructive troublemakers. Very important distinction. So I'm going to show you a little table. And what we're doing here is we're contrasting being a rebel with being a troublemaker. So let's just have a look at this. So I'll go on this side. Okay, what do we know about rebels? Okay, they're creative, they make things happen. They are passionate about the people-centred, or in my context, the patient-centred mission of the organisation. They're optimistic and hopeful about possibilities. Because they operate in this way, they generate energy for people around them and get other people on board. And they attract other people and resources. All the time they see potential and possibilities for change, even when things are tough. And very importantly, they're able to work together to build alliances with other people to make change happen. Very different to being a troublemaker. Okay? Troublemakers complain and whinge a lot of the time. And the focus of their anger is around me, the injustice of my situation, how badly I'm being treated. And typically they're very pessimistic. Lots of people that are troublemakers start off as being rebels, and they find themselves in organisational contexts that are difficult and dysfunctional and toxic. And they've tried many times to make change happen, and it's never happened, so they never believe it's going to, so they're very pessimistic and bleak about the future. And as a result, they sap the energy of other people and they alienate others. And, whenever this rebel bounces along and says, they've got this really good idea for doing something different, they're like, nah, not going to work. Nah, not going to work. They see problems in everything. And as a result, they're alone. So just a couple of things I think, from my experience, is that very often when you're a rebel, other people in the organisation think you're a troublemaker. Okay? Then the other thing that happens is so many people, particularly in my context, lots of clinical colleagues start off being rebels, having a real calling. I'm called to be a nurse, I'm called to be a doctor, I'm called to be a psychologist in the NHS. But I find myself in a really difficult situation, and I can't make happen, and I'm disappointed, and I cross that slippery slope to being a troublemaker. So, going to have a little bit more interaction again now. Got some questions for you. Okay? What are your insights around rebels and troublemakers, and which are you? And what moves people down that slippery slope from being a rebel to a troublemaker? And how do we stop people falling out of the boat? So again, I'm just going to give you 3 or 4 minutes to have a rebel and troublemaker conversation. I'm going to put the slide back. So, over to you. Do you know what's great? There's fantastic energy in this room. You can almost cut it. It's wonderful. Yeah. So, going back, okay, of all these descriptions here of a rebel, okay, one of those descriptions is the most important one when it comes to being able to remain and sustain operating effectively as a rebel. Okay, which one of those little descriptors is the most important one? No, it's together. Okay, yeah, because however great you are, you cannot be a rebel on your own. It's impossible, because there are so many kind of forces against you. You have to, you have to build alliances and you have to unite with other people. Okay? And again, in terms of, I work with lots and lots of young leaders, with trainee doctors and nurses, with students. And some of them are real rebels. And the number one piece of advice and what we help them with is organising with other people, building alliances with other people, not being isolated and alone. It's the biggest issue that moves people that way. Okay. So I thought what we'll do now is we'll have a disruptive case study. And what I want to tell you about is one of the initiatives that I'm involved in, which is called NHS Change Day. And how NHS Change Day came about is because like I said, I've worked in improvement for a very long time, okay? And I've led lots of big nationwide initiatives. So I used to run the Cancer Improvement Programme for England. I used to run the big heart disease improvement collaborative programme for England. And you know, up until a few years ago, it was really, really hard getting clinical trainees engaged in change. It was almost impossible. Okay? They were so focused on getting the experience and doing their training, and so they were rarely, you know, part of the big improvement efforts that were going on. But you know, the world's changed, and what's been starting to happen just the last few years is a whole new kind of cadre of clinical trainees that are coming through now who really want to engage, who are activists, who are just so up for change. So, and you know, it's wonderful actually to see that and be part of it, and it gives me so much hope for the future. So what happened was I had a chat with a couple of trainee doctors, a trainee paediatrician and a trainee GP. And we started off we met through Twitter, we met through social media, and we did some tweets, and then we had a phone call. So the three of us, we decided that we'd set up a social movement to transform the NHS. And like, we didn't have any permission, we didn't have any resources, but we decided to set this day up that we called NHS Change Day. And it was like one day a year when we get people across our whole system, whoever you are, whatever level you are in the system, whether you're a patient, you're a member of staff, you're a volunteer, like anybody, to take a small action on this one day, and all the small actions would add up to a lot of change across the NHS. So the idea was that we're going to create this social movement of people working in the NHS and with the NHS to demonstrate the difference they could make by one simple act on that day. And it became the biggest day of collective action for improvement in the history of the NHS. And I just want to show you some of this. Now, one thing about it is it didn't just like come out of the blue. You know, like we've been working for years around taking social movement principles and applying them in healthcare. And again, you know, it's this whole idea of you can't do change to people. You have to work with people. And you know, we'd worked on a whole load of initiatives and kind of I think built a lot of capability. But I think Change Day really kind of lit the torch. So our first Change Day was on the 13th of March 2013. We had one last year on the 3rd of March 2014. And our next one is, year 3, is on the 11th of March 2015, and we're actively organising for that now. And, you know, the whole idea is anyone could pledge, and there was lots of conversations beforehand, like, did we ought to say what people ought to pledge to do? And then we said, no, actually, it's a personal thing. It's whatever matters to people. And, you know, it's this idea that if you work at the grassroots of our system, you can make a difference. And overcoming this idea that the system doesn't allow us to make change. And the whole idea of it was, you know, how can we, you know, work with the kind of sense of calling and the energy and the commitment of our amazing workforce, the brilliance of our workforce, versus kind of compliance-based traffic light systems. And the thing about Change Day, 98% of the activity was volunteers, okay? And it was people, you know, engaging it because they wanted to, not because they had to. And these people here, we call them the hubbies. So how we organise for Change Day is across the country, we have local leaders, you know, to enable the change to happen. And you can kind of see the age profile there. Okay? The people that run Change Day, that organise Change Day, are nearly all young leaders. They're students, they're clinical trainees, and they're young managers. And they're amazing. And they do it on a voluntary basis. And again, you know, the whole idea is, how can we hold each other to account for making improvement happen, rather than being performance managed? So when we set up the first Change Day in 2013, what we asked people to do was to pledge to take an action that would make a difference, that was relevant to us. And so the first year we said, we're going to try and get 65,000 pledges, which was like It's a lot. And particularly when we live in a world that when you create a performance target, you kind of like get held to it and it becomes something horrible. So we said, 1,000 pledges for each year that the NHS has existed. So, and I'll show you a photo now, and this is where we got to on the 13th of March 2013. Okay, on the day, we had 181,000 pledges. Okay, and then actually, some more came in afterwards, and we got to nearly 190,000 pledges. Okay, that was in 2013. So then our young leaders said, oh, we want to be really ambitious in year 2. And oh my goodness. So they said, we want to go for 500,000 pledges. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Because what worries me is, like living in this like left-hand and right-hand world, once you start to say that our target is 500,000 pledges, people use it like a performance target. And if you don't get 500,000, they say you fail, So I was like really, really nervous, but they wanted to. So, okay. So, Change Day 2014, we got 800,000 pledges. Wow. 800,000, okay? I'll show you some example ones. I'll show you a couple of the kind of things, the sort of spirit of it. We had 81 separate campaigns. So there were campaigns around people with dementia. There were campaigns around smiling, and you might say, well, that's ridiculous. People should smile anyway. But actually, smiling really matters. And what we found is, like, if you smiled on Change Day, you kept smiling. Okay, and just the amount, and it was all spread by social media. It was really amazing. So, like I said, I'll tell you a few stories, and it was just kind of happening everywhere. I just picked a couple to show you. So this was nursing students at York University, and what they decided to do was on Change Day, they would set up a mock nursing unit. So they actually built a ward. And as nursing students, they had to be patients for the day, and it was kind of really profound for them. And what happened as a result, the university has actually now built that into the nursing curriculum. Okay, this one was interesting. So this was trainee paediatricians, and what they decided to do was they took like the common medicines they give children, and they tasted them themselves because they'd never tasted the medicines they give children. And some of these medicines were absolutely disgusting. Okay. And what happened as a result is that they actually worked with the pharmacists, and they changed the medicine. And we started this in England in 2013, and now it's spread. The Change Day movement is spread all around the world. So I was just going to show you a little film.
Ordinary people, as it were, in the NHS doing something that makes a difference and makes a change.
The thing that the three of us have in common is that we're the people that had the initial Twitter conversation and then phone call that led to the establishment of NHS Change Day. So when we had that conversation in June 2012, and it's kind of led to this.
Change Day is about a grassroots movement that's engaging people to make change happen at a local level. Using their intrinsic motivation for change in terms of choosing a pledge or something that they want to create to make change happen and putting that into action.
My pledge is to improve the reputation of our hospital.
I pledge to make all my patients feel welcome.
My pledge is to improve my patient's journey from the ward to the operating department.
My pledge is to read a story to one of the children.
I pledge to try my best every day to deliver the best care possible and to make the patient at the center of all my activities.
We've gone on a fantastic journey in an amazingly short period of time.
98% of the activity is voluntary.
Absolutely.
People are doing it, like you say, because they want to, not because they have to, because we're connecting our workforce back to their own values and the reasons why they came into healthcare.
to say that from one small brief conversation we've ended up with 300,000 people pledging.
A people-led, inspiring and energetic movement
encourages each of us to believe that we can make a difference in health.
Improve every day. Change Day Sweden.
Change Day has inspired us to work together. Try Change Day in Saskatchewan.
Share the responsibility of patient safety.
I can make a difference.
We have got over 1,000 global associates working to make their pledges for Cerner Change Day.
So just goes to show what happens when you actually start to massively link with that intrinsic motivation and you get people doing change because they want to, not because they have to. So kind of the last bit of my talk, I just want to talk about where do I think some of the big opportunities are for change agents. Actually, I think the two biggest ones are about, this theme about being bridge builders between groups who aren't connected. And then the other one is about knowledge and our role as curators and collectors and sharers of knowledge, I think really important. So one of the big changes that I see happening globally is that we're moving from what I'm calling change programs to change platforms. It's happening all over the place. And what I mean by that is, when we talk about a change program, I mean that the NHS is full of change programs at the moment because we've got so much change that needs to happen. And we bring in the program management people and we say, these are the goals and this is the accountabilities and this is what you're being held to account for. But, there's nothing wrong with change programs per se. Often it's the way that we go about them. The leaders prescribe the outcome and the method in a very top-down way. I mean, I'm a very big believer in the power of improvement methods, but too often, we prescribe this is going to be a lean hospital, and this is the way you're going to do it. And it just doesn't work. And what happens is, again, people at the front line experience the change as imposed rather than embraced. So in this new world, where we can connect with everybody across the world, we're moving more and more to change platforms. And we actually create a platform or a place where people can come together, enabling everyone who works in the organisation or the system, including customers or service users, actually, so that everybody can help challenge the issues. And this way is about valuing diversity of thought. We want to give everybody a voice. We want to hear every perspective, And it's interesting, again, because there's a lot of evidence that shows that diverse groups of non-experts consistently outperform small groups of experts. Okay, it happens all the time, and this is about how do we, as leaders, instead of trying to managing this process, how actually are we creating an environment where change can flourish? So I just want to give you a couple of examples of change platforms. So this first one is this school that we set up, this virtual school called the School for Health and Care Radicals. And the reason we set this up is because we did a learning review in the NHS, and what it showed us was that the biggest issue for frontline staff in our system not engaging with change was because they felt they needed permission. They felt, I can't even make the smallest change in my organisation because I live in a world of avoiding risk and compliance and inspection and regulation, and it's just not an environment where I can create change. So we decided to set up a school for radicals. Okay, we decided to set up a school where we could actually teach all these frontline staff to rock the boat and stay in it, but not a kind of a school that did it to people, but a school that was a change platform where a lot of these people who are the rebels and the radicals and the heretics are very isolated. So what if we could create this change platform where we could create a community where all these people came together? So we decided to create this virtual school called the School for Health and Care Radicals. And the response we got to it was unbelievable. Okay, we just set it up with about 2 weeks' notice, and we got more than 1,600 enrollees across 40 different countries, and we're able to create this amazing community of people connecting. I haven't got time to go through the curriculum now, but I'll give you some links around it. And basically, we ran it for 5 weeks with virtual lectures, getting people to organise. It was far more important to people to connect with other radicals than the kind of explicit knowledge we gave them in the curriculum. But it was about, change starts with me, and who am I as a change leader in the world or a change activist, about forming alliances for change, because you can't be a rebel on your own. It's about thinking about resistance in a really different way. So instead of saying resistance to change is something kind of bad, we think resistance to change is great, because actually we want a world where we have diversity and disruption and resistance, and how do we work in that way? A whole load of content around how we actually make change happen and how we lead change. And then how we move beyond the edge, where do we go next? And the data on it was amazing. We were getting 2.6 million Twitter reach during the term time. The slides got downloaded 28,000 times. Anybody who wanted one could have a volunteer mentor. And again, it was all done for free. And we linked people up all over the world. And what we did was we said to people, if you want, you can do this program, and if you can show that you made a difference as a result of it, we'll certificate you as a change agent. And I think we're nearer 200 now. And what was interesting as well about this was it won a kind of an award, which was that the School for Health and Care Radicals was identified by the Observer and Nesta as one of Britain's new radicals for 2014. What I thought was interesting about the new radicals was, the thing about the new radicals, it was about people doing radical things for social good. Okay? Of the 50, only 3 were in the public sector. All the rest were either voluntary sector or social enterprises and startups. What does it say about the state of the public sector in our country that only 3 out of 50 new radicals for public good are actually from the public sector? This is just another example I wanted to show you of a change platform. So we've got all these people getting, organised, and we've got all these health and care radicals, and we can't run a school all the time. So we decided to create a change platform for them, and it's a hub for change activists, and it's called The Edge, we kind of do a new version of it. We do it 24 times a year, so it's kind of about every 2 weeks. And what we do, it's a hub for change activists to come together, to learn and connect, to mobilise for transformational change. And what we do is we look around the world, the people that we learn from, and we work on 5 themes. So there's a theme about being a change activist, there's a theme about being a transformational leader, there's a theme about thought diversity and disruptive innovation, a thought around how do we make big change happen, and there's a theme around what we call the new methods for change. And what we mean by that is methods like open innovation, open source, working with digital, crowdsourcing, hackathons, the new ways that we work. And we set that up about 6 weeks ago. 4,000 people signed up in the first 2 weeks. And the level of connectivity that we're having with it is absolutely unprecedented. About 95% of the content doesn't come from healthcare, but we take the best thinking and the best ideas in the world, and we make sense of them, and we connect people around them. And for me, the underpinning thing of this whole kind of new direction for change agents is this issue about thought diversity, because we need different voices, we need different perspectives coming in. And again, this is back to Gary Hamel. He said, tomorrow's management systems will need to value diversity, dissent and divergence as highly as conformance, consensus and cohesion. We have to go there, okay? That's what change agency focuses on in the future. And I just say, bring it on. So nearly finally, okay, I think all of us as change agents, need to think about where we're going to be positioned in the future, okay? And I think one of the things we need to think about, as we create that roadmap, as we think about our role, we have to make sure that we're going to be part of the steamroller and not part of the road. And so think about that. And really, finally, just to say, if you want to connect with us, we'd love to have you as part of our movement, and just 4 ways of doing that. So first of all, follow us on Twitter. So we've got, there's me, there's NHS Improving Quality, the School for Radicals, The Edge. Subscribe to The Edge. Anybody can have it. Every single thing we do, we operate with openness and transparency. Every single thing is free. The next term of the School for Health and Care Radicals starts on the 30th of January. And again, you don't have to work in health and care to be part of the school. And then finally, if you want to engage with Change Day, there's the reference there. But I feel like the environment I work in, it's like really, really tough. It's a very hard place to be a change agent, and yet I've never felt more hopeful. Thank you.